Welcome to the Chapter 1 video. Chapter 1 starts us off with a very big picture look at academic writing. What does it consist of, and how does it differ from other kinds of writing? Some of this may seem obvious to you, but it's not a bad idea to be reminded of it before we go any further in the class. The book defines a paragraph as a unit of writing, or a unit of thinking, which is a little vague. I sometimes like to come at it from a different direction. I ask students, why do we have paragraphs at all? Most people respond by pointing out how difficult it would be to read pages and pages of uninterrupted text with no paragraph breaks. So really, a paragraph is about giving the reader a chance to stop and rest and think over what you've just said. So it makes sense then as a writer that you'll use those paragraph breaks to put space between one point and the next, and so that your reader can think about one idea before they move on to think about your next argument. Another thing this chapter looks at is paragraph length. The chapter defines two types of paragraphs, academic and popular. I'd like to go a little more in depth and say that even in academic writing alone, you have different lengths of paragraphs depending on the kind of assignment that you're doing. I suggest thinking about your paragraph length as being in a ratio with your larger essay. If you're only writing a 3-page or 4-page essay, then your paragraphs are going to be fairly short, maybe 4 to 6 sentences in length. But if you're going to write a much longer essay, say 10 pages, maybe you'll have half a page to a page long paragraph. And for the really large essays like 25-page research papers, 30-page research papers, you might even have paragraphs that are 2 pages or more. Since we're thinking of paragraph breaks as a place for the reader to stop and think about what you've just said, it makes sense that for more complex arguments, like in those 25-page research papers, that you'll need a longer paragraph to develop each point. My advice, though, is if you're in doubt about whether to break a paragraph in 2 or leave it as one long paragraph, go ahead and break it. In my time, teaching, I find that students more often leave paragraphs that are too long than cut them into too short of pieces. So this audience-centered approach to paragraphing also applies to many other aspects of writing. Your textbook asks you to consider a few basic questions about your audience. What grammar should you use? What vocabulary? What information? But as we proceed in this class, you'll want to think even more about who your audience is and what they need. For example, if you want to write persuasively about a controversial topic, immigration, abortion, those kinds of things, you're going to need to ask yourself, first of all, what does my audience already believe about my topic? What assumptions do they hold? What biases might they be unaware of? And even more, how do they want to be spoken to? What tone is the best way to reach them and get them on my side? What kinds of examples and situations are they going to relate to? And what information do they need to know? Or even, what will make them even care about this topic in the first place? In my face-to-face classes, I often have students imagine a situation where they make a small driving mistake that results in a fender bender while their parent or spouse is out of town. Then I have them imagine writing a text to a friend that they might send immediately following that accident. And then secondly, I have them write an email to that absent parent or absent spouse explaining the situation and telling the details of the wreck. And finally, I have them write an imaginary letter, say, to the insurance company, explaining the details of the accident. As you can imagine, when we compare the 3 stories, there are always inconsistencies. In the text to the friend, they might say, that crazy person came out of nowhere. And then in the letter to the insurance company, it's the driver of the oncoming vehicle. To the friend, maybe I wasn't paying attention, oops. And then to the parent, they say, I only looked down for a second. But then to the insurance company, they'll write, it was a momentary break in concentration. So this is what your textbook talks about when it says that grammar and vocabulary change depending on your audience. In English classes, we often like to talk about right and wrong grammar or correct and incorrect grammar. But the truth is, what we call correct grammar, standard English, can be the wrong grammar in certain situations. Maybe correct English makes you come across as someone who doesn't want to have fun. Or, if you've ever had someone think that you're too serious or too proper, or that you don't like them when you write a message that's too correct. They're expecting you to be more casual in your writing and use slang and contractions and so forth. Later in the course, we're going to talk about discourse communities, which is when you can signal to a certain group of people that you belong with them purely based on the grammar and vocabulary that you choose to use. It sends a message that you're part of their group, that you belong there. Similarly, even in a single academic course, the expectations for written work can really vary from assignment to assignment. Perhaps in a very short response essay that's a page or two, or a discussion board post, you're allowed to use more informal language, slang and contractions and so forth. But then when you write your final research paper, that's expected to be much more formal, not use contractions, not even perhaps use the first person or the second person, no I or you or me. When you're in doubt, though, in this class and in others about which register to write in, the formal or the informal, go ahead and ask your professor and to clarify, what their expectations are for that particular assignment. And finally, remember to keep the big picture in mind at all times. Most academic writing is not really about expressing yourself or getting your opinion out there. It's about having a specific effect on your audience. Pretty much every kind of academic writing is about, and every aspect of academic writing is about creating that effect on the audience member. Your format, your grammar, your voice, your tone, the content, the argument tactics you use, they all come together to create that effect on the reader. It's a good idea when you get to the end of your essay to go back and try to read over it with the fresh eyes of a potential audience member. How will this piece of writing that you've just written sound to a first-time reader? How will your voice come across to them? Will they understand everything that you're talking about and understand all of your vocabulary? If you can master the ability of seeing your writing through the eyes of your audience, then you're well on your way to becoming an effective and masterful communicator.